Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
So there I was, a budding lieutenant junior grade, midway through the curriculum in the F-14 RAG in Oceana. The phase of instruction was called advanced phase. It was all about the radar jamming environment, and the bulk of it was all in the simulator. And it was really a drill for the Rios in the back. But they were nice enough to put a single flight into to culminate that curriculum. And as you might imagine, it was a recipe or almost a license to steal for a couple of knuckleheads who are starting to feel their oats midway through the program.
Nice. Nice. Well, we're going to hear more about that. Greetings, everyone. Repeat here, coming to you from New Hampshire today. You're listening to So There I Was. Where's my co-host, Fig?
Hey, I'm lucky enough to be in God's country, which is just outside of Kearney, Missouri, and it is our pleasure to welcome to episode number 203, Taco. A different taco than we
You're
have
our second
on,
taco.
You're the second taco. But welcome, Taco.
Street tacos. There's a lot of tacos out there.
There you go. Well, it's so creative, you know. With a last name like Bell, what can you do?
I grew up on the border. I grew up on the border, you know, and I could speak 3 or 4 words of Spanish, so it all made sense.
Well, yes. And, you know, it could have been a lot worse.
Yes, it could.
Right? I mean, it could have been a lot worse. Mine could be a whole lot worse.
Yeah. Indeed. Indeed it could. So, all right. Well, you didn't start off in the F-14 RAG. I can't imagine. I got to ask it. It's a stupid question, I know. I've never seen an F-14 simulator. I imagine it's like any other airplane simulator, sitting fore and aft. And
well, actually,
I mean,
there were 2 different sim setups. There was a full cockpit setup that was 360 degrees, and you could go fight with the guy right next door to you, kind of thing. But there was also this makeup that was really designed for the backseater drills, and it was more of a sitting at a desk and looking at a computer screen. So there were 2 different arrangements. The bulk of that ADFAS piece was all about the radar scope and what the guy in back's got to go through to try to defeat the various threats there in that radar jamming environment.
ECCM, electronic countermeasures. Yeah,
exactly.
I remember my acronyms. Oh, there you go. All right.
Sounds like a double negative, doesn't it?
Right. Exactly. And then there's electronic counter. No.
Whoa. Yeah, I know.
Stop. So anyway, all right. Well, so you didn't start off life in the advanced phase in the F-14 RAG, though. When is it that you looked skyward and said, I can do that?
I want to do that. I have to do that. Actually, you've got a little aviation in your family blood, don't you?
Yeah, it's kind of it's an somewhat odd, strange, different kind of story, but a long line of aviators in the family. I had a grandfather. My mother's dad was the first, got winged back in 1935. And then my dad ended up as a naval aviator as well. Both of them, my grandfather and my dad, were academy guys. And grandfather flew a lot of the patrol craft, you know. In fact, I think one of the first pictures I have of a scrapbook of my grandfather was his very first squadron. And indeed, they did put float planes on battleships and slingshotted them off.
I've seen pictures of that. Did he do that?
Yeah, he did that. And it's kind of amazing scrolling through some of those photos. My dad was.
Then they would land in the water and they'd crane them back aboard.
Crane them
right?
back on. Yeah. It's crazy. Hard to believe. And my dad was a Vigi guy.
I knew that.
And the story kind of goes off track to a small degree because, you know, this is Vietnam time frame, early Vietnam time frame, and he's on cruise in 1965. And
Do you know which boat?
yeah, off the Indy.
Okay.
Independence. Yeah. October 1965, though, he in fact, he was due to roll out of the squadron, but it elected to stay for, you know, that extra month they said they needed him there on cruise. And in October 1965, screaming into, you know, northern Vietnam and coming back out after taking a bunch of photos. They got hit by AAA or SAM, not exactly sure, but they ended up in the water, and a fisherman picked up he and his Rio, who both survived a high-speed ejection. And then the fisherman was kind enough to take both of them into town for an all expenses paid vacation there in Vietnam for the next 7.5 years
at the Hilton.
Yeah. So that was a part of the mix up in the family there. And long story short, I grew up with a stepfather, and I really didn't meet my dad. I was 2 years old when he was shot down. So I really didn't meet him till I was about 10, and I never lived under the same roof with him. But oddly enough, he and I had an older brother and a younger sister, and my dad and I shared the most in common. In fact, it was eerie to my mother. She'd look at me all the time with this look on her face and say, you remind me of him all the time. But so I kind of grew up, as I've already mentioned, looking through scrapbooks, and I was always fascinated with military aviation and thought it was really cool.
So I know a little bit about this because Fig briefed me on the background, but what I'm thinking our listeners aren't getting just yet is why your dad didn't live with you guys when he came back.
So my mother, so in defense of my mother, I never questioned her decision making. My dad was I think they had him listed MIA for upwards of 3 years, missing in action. Mm-hmm. And there were three of us, as I mentioned. I had a sister who was a newborn that same year he was shot down, and I had an older brother. So, you know, my mother had her hands full. Oh, yeah. Yeah. She elected,
and the Vietnamese never listed him as in captivity.
Well, they did eventually, and he, you know, different day and age of you know, flow of information, and you know, my mother was never really sure of much of anything till the day he stepped foot back in the United States in 1973. So my mother remarried, and I grew up with a stepfather. I like to say I was somewhat fortunate in that, you know, the man she found to remarry, he took all of us under his wing, so to speak, and he was a good man. So I kind of had two dads in the end. So that's kind of what transpired.
That's awesome. And can I make the assumption, because we heard this from another individual that was talking about this subject, that when you're missing in action, does everything stop? Like, were you guys living on base by chance and they kicked you off base housing? I mean, how's that work? Or do you remember? Or do you?
I don't know all the specifics, you know, how that works. We were not living on base. That's another funny story, because I was born in Sanford, Florida there. That's where the Vigi base was. Okay. That's now a regional airfield there. That was a Navy base way back when. And
that's where they have the Fun and Sun every year now.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mother used to joke, she routinely would be holding me in her arms and swatting water moccasins off the front porch there in lovely Sanford, Florida, with a broom.
Nice.
But it didn't take long, you know. With my mother was out there, you know, by herself. Her parents were, my you know, grandfather was still in the Navy, but he was a West Coast guy, and my mother had two younger sisters. And I know it took no time before my mother invited herself into one of her sisters' brand new home in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So we ended up there shortly after all that went down. It, you know, just a support system with some family. That's kind of where we settled down for a while.
That's why you're so you're half fluent in the 3 words of Spanish that you know.
Albuquerque. Yeah, it started in Albuquerque, and then we moved to El Paso, Texas, is where I kind of grew up shortly after that.
Of course.
I spent some time in El Paso in missile school.
Yeah.
Good
Hey,
old Fort Bliss.
Fort Bliss.
Before we get too far past this, your grandfather, he flew in World War II, right? He was winged in 35. Did he fly in?
Yes, he did. He ultimately, I guess he made it as far as taking command of the USS Hornet.
Huh?
And that was in the mid 50s. I think he was like 54, 55 time frame.
Okay. And towards the end of Korea, probably?
Yes. And
All right.
that carrier is a museum piece now there in San Francisco or Alameda across the bay there.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
yeah.
Okay.
I've been on
I don't
it.
know where
I
the
took a
okay.
tour on it.
Yeah, we actually donated a few items, from some of his stuff that sit in the museum somewhere. I don't know, some photos or something along those lines. I have an aunt that lives in the area. She worked with the foundation there and providing some of the goodies for them.
I was there for Fleet Week maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were over on that side of the bay, so we went on it, and it was a weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a Friday, but a bunch of Boy Scouts were showing up. They were going to spend the weekend, spend the night on it, as part of their thing.
That's cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Probably no ghosts running around on that thing, I'm guessing.
Not at all.
Right? Yeah. No kidding.
All right, so you got a little family lineage, and you're like, okay.
Before you go any further, I left one more out. So I have a son who is now a naval aviator as well. So he's the fourth
Sierra
generation.
Hotel.
Yeah.
And where is he, and what is he flying?
So he was a P-8 guy, and
okay.
yeah, he finished his first fleet tour about a little more than a year ago, and was gifted after that a drone spot.
Oh, how awesome!
He is a fully
is that?
qualified. I can't even think of the name of this thing, but it's the equivalent of the Air Force. Which one is it? The Global Hawk, I guess. It's the Navy version.
Yeah.
Complement that P-8 mission.
Oh, thanks. And so, is this considered a shore tour?
This is a shore tour, and yet they deploy with, I don't know, it's kind of crazy. I can understand why so many of the JOs out there they're not so happy with the Navy. They've been tossing around how they want to stand up a couple of squadrons and how they want to deploy the assets. And in fact,
right.
So the training's in Jacksonville. We want to stand up a squadron in Whidbey Island. So it took like a year in Jax. And then he moved back to Whidbey Island a year ago. Hey, help us stand up the squadron here. And oh, by the way, there's a war kicking off back here, most likely. And I think we're gonna do it from Jax. So he's back in Jax right now as we speak. He's been back and forth across the country here 4 times in the last 14 months.
Wow. Crazy. Oh, that's brutal. Yeah, I can see why they're upset. I mean, geez, you learn to go fly airplanes and then you got to fly a drone. Totally different.
Yes. Yes.
Skill set, So, oh, man. All right. So you figure you're going to go. Well, let me ask one last question here. Either your dad's still with us?
No, they have both passed on. My dad, let's see, that was, it's been 10 years ago now, 2016. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Because we've had 2 Vietnam POWs.
Well, he knew. Did you meet
McGrath?
Masher?
McGrath?
Yeah.
Did you meet him?
Was that
you
what
asked
he went by? He went by Masher?
Yeah.
Okay, I do have a story on that one. I'll give you a story on that one. That one's.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We had him on. I think it was 199. I'll look it up.
Small world stuff.
So, yeah, right. Yeah. Let us know, and then we'll move into your early career.
Okay. So, the transition to the civilian world there and becoming an airline pilot and starting the training and it was time for the first opportunity to go back home after being out at training for a while. And so I'd been given, all these instructions on how to find your way home and jump seating in particular, which was all new to me. So I stumble into a major airport and find the gate I'm supposed to be at and trying to figure, and it's packed and there's people everywhere.
So you're a brand new pilot at your airline trying to get home.
Yes. And
okay.
I happen to notice after I've checked in with the gate agent, there's a couple of other pilots standing around in their uniforms. And I said, boy, I don't know exactly how this works. How do we sort through this whole thing? Who's going to get the jump seat? And these two other guys in their uniform come up to me from the same airline, and we start talking. They say, hey, don't worry about a thing. We'll take care of you. I said, yeah, this is my first time. I can't spell jump seat at this point. And he says, hey, what's your name? And I said, my name's Matt Bell. He said, Bell? He says, you wouldn't happen to know Jim Bell, would you? And I said, well, my dad's name is Jim Bell. He said, your dad and I spent a lot of time together in Vietnam. I said, shit. What? He says, yeah, we were POWs together. My name's Mike McGrath. I'm the guy who does all the artwork for most of the books you've probably read over the last few years. I said, yeah, I've seen your little moniker there at the bottom. I said, this is unbelievable. He says, nice to meet you. He said, let's call your dad.
Nice.
But yeah, I guess Mike had a few.
Wow.
I don't know how many years, but it wasn't that many. He was at the airline before he retired, but it was. Yeah, what a small.
I think he had a class date when he got shot down. He goes, I had an involuntary extension.
He said, I'm showing up for my interview. What was it, 26 years late?
Yeah,
is that right? I didn't hear that part.
Yes. He kind of like your dad. He had a separation date and everything already set up, and they go, hey, we can't lose you right now. We need you to stay for like 3 more months, and he did, and that's when he got shot down. Yikes. And he already had an interview, with our airline already on the books. So when he showed up, in 92 or something like that, he shows up and they go, well, what brings you to United? He goes, well, I'm actually 26 years late for my interview, but
I had a class date.
I was detained.
Maybe
I was arrested.
Now that it's starting to come back to me. I guess we did chat a while, and I did get some of that story, but I had forgotten that.
Yeah, dude, super.
So
man.
We had him on episode 196. So there I was, that US/episode/196, and that episode was titled "The Beginning of My Crime Spree."
Yeah, because he said he was arrested. So I met him at a new pilot winging ceremony, I don't know, 2-3 months ago. Somebody whispered in my ear, hey, you need to go meet that guy. And he was in his uniform because he was presenting wings to his grandson that started at our airline. And so I went up and met him, and then, the rest of the story, how we got connected.
Yeah.
What a small world, though, huh? You're standing at the gate, and this guy says, hey, you don't know Jim Bell, do you? Wow.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
And did they make sure you got on the jump seat? Or
yeah, they did. We all got on, and we all got to where we wanted to go, and it all worked out just fine.
Fantastic. All right. All right. Well, I think we can finally work our way around towards AOCS. How'd that come about for you? Aviation Officer Candidates.
This is funny. My wife loves this story. So let's start, as I mentioned, I was just a kid from West Texas, grew up in El Paso in high school, senior year. You know how most knuckleheads are. Your parents look at you. What are your plans next? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I said, maybe you ought to go off to school or something. I said, okay, I was a decent student, I guess. Well, if you're going to go to school, you need to know what you're going to study. Yeah. You're a math and sciences guy. How about an engineering program?
Oh boy.
Sounds right to me. Sounds good. Well, then you need to figure out which engineering program you want to do. And this is the early 80s in Texas. And my stepdad picks up the paper this same day and he says, look here's an article on the highest starting salaries for college grads. Guess what it is? What is it, Dad? Petroleum engineers.
Yes.
I said, makes sense to me,
Yeah.
It's
West
all about the
Texas,
money,
why
I
not,
guess.
right?
And
Yeah, sure.
I went, picked Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas, in pursuit of a petroleum engineering degree. And by the time, so senior year now in college, and it's timing is everything, and everything works cyclically, right?
Right.
So from the day that briefing with my stepdad about highest paying salaries in petroleum engineering, now the market for the oil industry, by the time I'm ready to graduate, has taken a turn for the worse. And it's in serious recession at the time. So, but senior year, they're prepping you for, becoming one of the guys. And hey, the oil companies are coming on board to do interviews. You need to sign up for an interview. And I did a couple of interviews, big names, and they both went the same way. They said, Matt, it's really nice to meet you, but we're not hiring. We're building a database. I'm like, well, how does that work? So I walked home after a couple of that experience, and I said, I think I need to explore some other ideas because I'm not sure where I'm headed. And right across the street from the front entrance to Texas Tech University was the Navy recruiter station. And I said, I'm familiar with the Navy. I've heard of it. I can spell Navy. I'm going to walk over there and talk to those guys because I was getting mail from the Navy too that said, we want to talk to you. And it was the only positive that was coming through at the time. So I walked in with his letter. Lieutenant Duke meets me, who's wearing wings of gold. He's an aviator. Says,
all right.
Nice to meet you, Matt. What brings you here? And I said, you guys keep sending me this letter here, says you want to talk to me. And he says, you an engineer? I said, well, I guess I'm going to be. And he asked me one question. He said, what's your GPA?
Uh-oh.
And I was not at the top of my class by no means. I told him my GPA and he said, I'm not sure this program here would be the right one for you. And I said, what is the program? He said, that's nuclear engineering.
Oh,
I'm like, okay. I can't spell nuclear. That's for dang sure. So I said, I got a question for you. I said, how about aviation? And his eyes got real big. And he said, you want to be a pilot? I said, can I? He said, sit down, take this test. I said, shouldn't I go home and study? No, this is easy. You're an engineer. I took the test, sent me for a physical. I was graduating in May. He said, he called me back a week or two later, said, I got a class date in June in Pensacola. You want to go? I said, I'll be there. And that's how it all started.
That was June of like 84 or 5?
85.
When was that?
Yeah.
June of 85. All right. That's about the same time we went to OCS, wasn't it?
No, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. That's June of 86. I'm a year group 86 guy.
Okay. Yeah. That's when I was in OCS in June of 86.
Yep.
June of 86. AOCS. So
I was on mute. Yeah, I did 81 and 83, and I was a Hawk missile guy for just shy of 3 years before I made it to flight school finally. So.
Hey, how did that conversation go? So you leave you go home and you say, hey, parents, I'm going to go to AOCS. I went from petroleum engineer to AOCS. How did that go? Do you remember?
I think they were dumbfounded.
Whoa, what do you...
There was kind of silence on the other end.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
I can only imagine how that went. Well, any memorable, well, I know there is, because that experience always leaves some kind of, stain on us, all of us. But is there any AOCS stories that stick out to you that, other than, let's see. Yeah. Well, are there any that stick out that you always think of when you think of AOCS or that part of your life where you're like, well, that was something I had to get through to get to this, but.
Oh gosh, I hadn't thought about an AOCS story in so long. I mean, it was a great experience in the end, as I mentioned.
Yeah, that's it. A great experience.
It was, because, it was kind of the full range of emotions. There it is. Exactly.
There you go.
It was challenging. It was exciting. It was frightening. Yeah. When you can put all those emotions together in one experience, it's going to be fun. But Holtry in the end made it very.
This is Gunnery Sergeant Holtry you're talking about, right? Gunnery Sergeant Holtry.
Yeah, let's see. Where is he? Yes.
Is he in that picture right there?
Yeah, I see him.
He's in there.
Which way? Okay,
where
where
I
is
just put up a picture of, looks like 10 Marines. I don't know which one is Holtry then. I've got this picture of him.
Yes.
With a Navy captain, but that's obviously many years later. This is all from the book Pressure Cooker by First Sergeant Crouch.
Nice.
Yes, which I have read the majority of. It's good stuff. It's entertaining for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So bunches of them. All right. So this is audio show. Obviously, people listening can't see the pictures, but I had a picture of a Marine gunnery sergeant about a millimeter from a candidate's face.
Yeah, and with his Smokey Bear hat on it.
His Smokey Bear hat on, and it looks like his head's, the gunnery sergeant's head's about to explode. He's yelling so loud.
Well, we've all had that wonderful experience, and it's awesome, and I'm sure you enjoyed the hell out of that. But
my favorite story was the one I think I already shared. Was within arm's reach of naval aviation was the funniest one.
Right.
Was that before we started recording?
I think that might have been before we started.
Oh, tell it again.
Go ahead, tell it
again so our listeners can hear.
Yeah, it was early on. It was gear issue day. It's a day you're still wearing a chrome dome as affectionately referred to it. And it's gear issue day where they put you on a bus and shuffle you down to the transient line at the airfield in a warehouse, an old hangar there, with all the instructions to cycle through and get your gear and get back out and take a seat and wait on everyone else to there were 60 of us in this class I was in. It was a pretty big class.
Okay.
And those
gear issue days are pretty early, right? I mean, you were in the first week?
It was the first couple of weeks, I want to say.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because we're wearing those chrome domes. You didn't graduate till after maybe a couple of weeks of that torture. So you cycle through, and I was early on, being a last name ends in B, you're always in alphabetical order kind of thing. And you would come through the hangar and come out with your duffel bag worth of stuff and find a place to sit down and not eyeball the area, all those, just scared to death you're going to mess something up. But I couldn't help but notice as I came out, Gunnery Sergeant Holtry's got one of our classmates under his arm, like he's buddies with him, and he's talking with him.
Hey, old buddy.
And I sit down and I start eavesdropping on this conversation going on. And he says, you see those airplanes over there? Yes, sir. I see those airplanes. He said, well, point at them, sir. Point at those airplanes. So Gunnery Sergeant helps this candidate hold his arm horizontal. And he says, point at it and hold that. Take a good look at that. He said, can you tell me what kind of airplane that is? Yes, sir, I can. He said, what kind of airplane is it? He said, that's an A7, sir. He said, all right, well, take a good look and take a good mental picture there. Yes, sir, I got that picture. He says, I want you to have that picture clear in your mind so that when I get your DOR and you run home crying to your mama and daddy, you can tell them you were within an arm's reach of naval aviation.
Nothing like a motivator right there, right?
Uh-oh.
Hey, out of the 60 that you started with, do you remember how many you graduated? Just give me ballpark. There are a lot
45, maybe 40, somewhere in there. But that includes, a lot of the guys who ended up getting injured at some point and
get cycled back maybe.
Yeah, cycle back later. But the kid that was under Gunnery Sergeant's arm that day, he didn't make it much longer. Yeah.
He probably smelled that.
Yes,
that gunny probably smelled the weakness and said, "We're going to just nick this in the bud right now."
Yeah.
Nip it.
Yeah,
nip it in the bud. I might even have that soundbite somewhere. But hey, I want to take just a moment here and put this photo back up. And good morning, First Sergeant Crouch. He's live with us on the YouTube stream, and he says that would be Leroy Crenshaw, the monster.
Crenshaw. Yes. I remember that game for sure.
Yeah. And then let's see, I think it was
Poultry is in the back row.
Yeah, back row to the right of the dark green.
Yeah, the very far back on the right. Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, he says Poultry is to the left of the big black Marine outdoors on the steps. And, well, maybe it's a different picture than I had that. But anyway, so good morning, First Sergeant Crouch. Welcome. Glad you're here with us. Always love your stories. Before you got here, we were talking about how the fact all of you could have been stand-up comedians in any other life. So.
Actually, I'm
glad you're here, and we're grateful for your service in helping mold us knuckleheads into officers that could be relied on in a pinch. So thank you.
Mail call was hilarious.
Oh, I can only imagine. All right, let's hear one.
Well, I mean,
how's that go? How's mail call go?
You've heard them,
Sure.
If they sensed there were photographs or anything inside an envelope,
oh yeah,
they were going to get shared with the entire class. And there was
God forbid cigarettes.
There's going to be some girlfriend sending something funny.
Oh, you bet. So I turned 21 at OCS, and I gave specific instructions to my parents and anybody that was going to send email. Do not send any birthday cards or anything with birthday on it, because I didn't want the attention just because of that.
Yes.
So I'll see if I can find it here while we're chatting some more. But my nephew was in boot camp. Oh, here it is. Yeah, here. I'll find it and I'll put it up. But so my nephew was in boot camp, and my daughter was about, I want to say 12, 14 years younger than he is. So she's a little girl, and she draws him a picture. So I'm going to see if I can't get that up. But Drew, we did not send this photo to you. Anyway, keep going. I'll put the photo up here in a minute. So,
well,
yeah. So mail call. Yeah. If you had cigarettes or food also, that could be brutal.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you made it through AOCS, Taco, because otherwise the rest,
right? We wouldn't have anyone to talk to this morning.
No, we would. Yeah. So was F-14s your first choice? Well, first of all, before we skip flight school, was there any terrifying or rather comedic events that remind you of your flight training experience?
Okay.
Naval aviation.
Before we answer that, this is the photo that we would not let my daughter send to Drew in boot camp. So it's a picture of him supposedly in a Marine uniform and a nice rainbow over his head, and you and a smiley face on it. And the DIs would have had an absolute field day with that. Something you're not telling us, kid. Private.
That would have gone on for a long while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Mail call would start out as pure terror to stand-up comedy a couple weeks later. So,
yep.
Sergeant Crouch. All right. Back to Fig's question. I'm sorry. I've definitely taken us off the rails here, and I didn't mean to do that.
What was Fig's question?
Yeah, it was so long ago, I don't even remember.
It was something about OCS in the right.
Yeah, was there any memorable, either comedic or terrifying experiences that come back when you think about your flight training, naval aviation flight training? It's time to the boat.
The first one that pops into my head was T-34s with my on-wing.
Okay.
My on-wing was a P-3 guy, and gosh, I'm trying to remember his name. And
right.
Anyway,
well, it may or may not come to you. So what happened?
So it was the day. It's early on in FAM flights. The first
familiarization. Yeah.
Yeah. Can't say that this early in the morning for some reason.
That's all right.
But it's the day we're being introduced to how to manually crank down the gear. So I'd been given all these instructions, and this is how we're going to do it. And so we get up airborne, and okay, Matt, I want you to crank the gear down. All right. And so I don't know if you recall the T-34, but it was like opening the window in a car. That was the mechanism that you used to. And it was on the sidewall, if I remember correctly. And so I started trying to crank this. You got to flip the little handle out and start trying to crank this gear down manually. And when I first started trying to move the handle, I'm like, gosh, it's not this is a lot harder than I anticipated. And so I had to really bear down on this handle. And it moved about an inch, and then the handle broke off in my hand. And so I transmitted to my on wing there. I said, "Sir, we got a problem." He said, "What's that?" And I held the handle over my head. And then when I heard him say, "Oh, you're not joking, we got a problem." He said, "I sure hope we can get the gear down normally now." And
yeah,
the end of that story was the gear were able to come down with the normal gear handle. But
hallelujah, hallelujah.
He said, I've never seen that happen before, but we'll call you a qual. You're good to go.
Oh, too funny.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know if you can see this or not, but Suzuki Hoffner says to tell you hello. He says he flew with you on the 727 when you were a brand new half-winger engineer.
Say the name again.
Say hi, Matt. Hoffner. Suzuki Hoffner.
Yes.
He was Academy guy.
Yes.
Hilo guy, I think.
Yeah. Great
We
guy.
actually, he's been one of our guests.
Is that right?
Yeah. He badmouthed the shit out of you, by the way.
So let him have it back. Let's hear it.
All right. So other than snapping off the manual gear extension handle.
Yeah. How about T2s or A4s?
Yeah. What else did you break?
What else did Gosh. Waiting for something to pop in. I will tell you, since we were on the POW piece, so first thing in the training command, the more of the small world thing was I'm there in Corpus Christi going through primary, sitting in the ready room very early on, probably before I had broken the gear handle, and sitting in the ready room, we're probably on a weather delay of some sort, but eventually, squadron duty officer, chimes in. Is there a ensign bell here? I'm like, I'm here. Yeah. He says, hey, you've got an appointment with the chief of staff of Sinatra. And I remember going, what is Sinatra?
Old Blue Eyes himself.
It sounds bad to me. I don't know what's going to happen, but it sounds bad.
The chief of staff over at Sinatra wants to see you. I'm like, really? What did I do wrong?
Right.
I get some instructions on how to find this place, and office entry my way into Captain Ray Alcorn's office, chief of staff at Sinatra at the time, and invites me in and introduces himself. And he was a fellow prisoner of war, knew my dad very well, and so the other part of that is, so he starts quizzing me, and he says, "Hey, what's your selection?" And I had kind of already learned about trying to be the diplomat and not wanting to sound too conceited about anything, but I kind of opened up with the answer, that they all sound so interesting to me, maritime, the helicopters or the jet.
Knock off the bullshit. What do you want to do?
It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
And so he kind of looked at me and he said, "Really?" He said, "What are you doing Saturday?" "Nothing on the agenda, sir." He said, "Why don't you meet me at base ops on Saturday?" And he said, "Do you got a G suit?" I'm like, "No, I don't have a G suit." He said, "Don't worry about it." I show up Saturday morning with Captain Alcorn there, and he straps me in the back of my first ever TA-4 Skyhawk ride, and takes me out into the working area and lets me fly around, and comes back and then debriefs me, says, "What's your selection thought process now?" And I said, "I think I'm going jets, sir."
Right.
I think that's a show title. I think I'm going jets.
That's pretty awesome. Yep.
Nice. Very.
I bet
cool.
that group, that POW group, I'm sure is very very tight. And when one of them finds out, somebody's son's going through flight school, I'm sure everybody knows about it. For sure. Yep.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. Well, we've been going at this for about 45 minutes now, which blows my mind. I just feel like we just sat down.
How's that possible?
Right.
My agenda has been blown out of the water here.
Right. Well, we're going to get to that, but I want to take just a moment and thank Derek. So there I was looking at a wall that had absolutely no personality, just empty space where something cool should have been. That's when I discovered DCArtworks.net. If you've got a wall in your office, hangar, your home bar, your shop, or the background behind your camera that could use a little authority, go take a look at DCArtworks.net. DC Artworks is veteran-owned and run by Derek Combs, and what he does is turn steel into a serious statement. These pieces aren't flimsy decorations. Every piece starts as a precision, laser-cut, hardened steel piece. Then it's hand-finished, so it looks like something worthy of the space it hangs in. The really cool part is that almost everything he produces is custom. The designs on the site are just examples. Derek regularly creates squadron logos, call signs, aviation artwork, business signs, and one-off gift pieces that you simply can't buy anywhere else. I've got a set of naval aviator wings from him that are 2 feet across, and I can tell you this, nobody walks past them without stopping and asking about them. That's the kind of work he does. He also does powder coating, engraving, and metal fabrication. So the pieces have real depth and color instead of looking flat like most wall art. And here's the part just for our listeners. If you go to DCArtworks.net and use the code STIW, you get 20% off your order. And that discount applies every time you order, even if something else is already on sale. So take a few minutes, go browse the designs, and then reach out to Derek about creating something custom. Because once you see what he can build, you'll start looking around your place thinking, yeah, that wall needs something. And thanks to DCArtworks.net for sponsoring this episode. All right, fantastic. So I guess we need to get on. So you decide to select jets. Obviously, got that little A4 ride. That would have been cool. I never got a pre-A4 ride until I was actually over at VT24 in Beeville. Did you do Beeville?
Yes,
Kingsville?
I did.
Beeville. Okay, yeah. So I was at I was VT24, and I did get a ride before I actually started the curriculum, and it was kind of cool. I was in the back seat of the XO's jet, and we were doing a ACM hop, and we were in a rolling scissors, and somewhere about the third or fourth time inverted, I'm looking up down at the earth at the other jet below us, and I key the intercom and go, awesome. Yeah. And we get back and landed. He goes, I thought you were going to tell me to knock it off, that you were getting sick or something. I'm like, oh no, I'm just so glad I'm here. This is what a thrill to be here and to get to do this shit. You know, get to be in a rolling scissors is like nothing else in the world.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
So yeah. So anyway, so you select jets and go to Beeville. Any fun stuff at Beeville? Remember your first carrier launch or anything like that? Or
oh, do I? It's great fun. I mean, in the end, it was great fun and very fond memories of, especially getting to go out to El Centro and do some of the work out of El Centro on detachments. And then the first carrier quals were quite a tale. Those was fortunate enough to get to go down to Key West working area. And so,
oh, okay.
And after a day of work out at the first time look at the boat there and flying back into Key West at the end of the afternoon, parking the jet and walking in the radar room, and duty officer says, hey, the word is there were 3 of us that had all landed about the same time, come back from the boat at the same time. Got word from the boat, you're all quals. And so, very happy about all that. That's great news. You guys all qualified. Said, and here's the other good news. You missed the last C9 going back, to Beeville this afternoon. So you've got a night in Key West.
Oh, darn it.
So we got to spend, that was my first introduction to Key West and learning all about the Duval crawl there in Key West. So,
right on.
Yeah.
Oh,
remember it very well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Yeah. Now I'm trying to think. So I did my T2 off the Lexington right out of Beeville. So we flew out from Beeville and back to Beeville, and then A4s was off of Key West. Did you do the Lexington both times?
No, actually it was a fleet carrier, and I can't recall which one for the T2. And then oddly enough, ended up off the Lexington for A4 quals. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it seemed like it was so much more violent in the A4, but my favorite story was about those. So everyone had class T-shirts and all that kind of stuff, and then. Not my class, so like I said, did the Lexington But the other class, the Lexington, went in for maintenance, and so they were on the JFK. And so the class, you could never get away with this today. The class T-shirt they had was the picture of Marilyn Monroe with her skirt blowing up, and said, and there's tagline was, "I bounced on JFK." So
perfect.
Yeah,
the good old days.
Couldn't get away with that for nothing.
No,
today.
No.
Oh well.
Yeah.
All right. So, it was Tomcat your first choice? Hornets would have been available by then, right?
So the Hornet was just breaking out, and it was an opportunity. And so, to tell the honest truth, I did put Hornets down first. Tomcats was second, and it was the first opportunity to learn. And you do well, and it points you a certain direction. So I had done well enough in carrier quals out of the training command that they said, the Hornets we don't want you to go Hornets. We want you to be a Tomcat guy. And I was perfectly happy either way. But in all honesty, I had Hornets at the top as, a new piece of equipment to try to fly. So
sure.
Yeah.
Well, you're probably a much better pilot now that you've flown the F-14, because the Hornets,
yes,
you just,
Tomcat.
Hey, there's a reason. Beast. There's a reason for everything,
For sure. Yes, there is.
We talked about that last week with Nasty. Things that seem like disappointments in first turn out to be huge blessings in the long run. So that's cool.
Although in this case, there was no disappointment. I was going to be happy one way or the other. So.
Well, there you go. Yeah, right. I mean, I was disappointed. I only got to fly Tomcats.
Yeah.
That didn't come out right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's super cool.
But at the same time, it was a small amount of intimidation there, because it immediately, how rumors and being a student, then it became, you went Tomcats. And then the first question would be East or West? Because, West was where everyone wanted to go West, because the rumors about going East were not as favorable. Let's just say.
What were the rumors?
The rumors were.
First Sergeant.
I think the words were, out on the East Coast, they eat their young.
That sounds like the Harrier rag, man.
Yeah, exactly.
So same kind. So did you go East or West?
I was an East Coast guy. Yeah. So I was like, here I go.
Yeah.
Well, so obviously you didn't get eaten. How'd it come out?
Yeah, so that put me in the F-14 rag, and it all worked out. And again, I finished well enough, and the reward was you did well enough in the Tomcat rag that we want you to fill an empty slot for the guys who are going on cruise right away.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Welcome aboard.
Yes, and so, yeah.
Tell me you at least got to the squadron before they departed, or did you meet them at the boat?
No, I met them right for the last bit of workups. What were we calling the last bit of workups at the time? I don't even recall. It was such a whirlwind.
Time in life. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
So I got one bit of workups the last at sea period, and then off we went to the med.
Wow. All right.
Okay. Well, tell me this then. I have in my notes, martini trouble in the rag. So what you're in the rag.
Yeah. So in the rag there, and as I mentioned earlier, midway through the syllabus, the phase is called advanced phase, and it's that piece introducing you to the world of radar jamming, and it's really a drill for your fellow backseaters going through the program with you.
The Rios work for it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work for them back there while we listen to what they figure out as the pilots. So the majority of this part of the curriculum was all in the simulators, as I mentioned, but it culminated with a single flight when you put the two young guys together, and the concept being you're supposed to take a real airplane out and turn the tape on in the back, which was a pre-programmed computer game, if you will, where it would play itself out, and he had to work his way through the presentations while I flew around and drilled circles in the air. That was okay, this makes a lot of sense. But as you might imagine, being creative naval aviators, it's a license to steal at the same time. So the only part of the brief that you got from the instructors was, don't screw it up, boys. And as you get to take a Tomcat out as, two young guys with no one else. You just head out into the area on your own, and what goes down, right? So I'm paired with Martini. We still laugh about it.
Martini's your back.
And
he's the call sign of your backseater?
Yeah, the call sign of the backseater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I kind of mentioned to him, I said, well, what's going through my mind is, this is Fightertown, USA. And ever since I arrived there from day one, you notice the way the departures go off of, I think that's 05 or 04s. Basically, they call it pylon turning around the tower.
Okay.
Is because you got to take off to the northeast and the working areas down to the south. So there's a big right turn involved.
Nice.
And so I said, I kind of mentioned to Martini, I said, hey, Martini, how about we pylon turn departure to get ourselves to the working area as quickly as possible? He says, let's do it. So, I did my best. We'll call it a low transition, wrap the Tomcat around the tower, pylon turn, and off to the area, and hooting and hollering and having a great deal of fun. And we head out in the area and tear it up for a while and fly upside down,
full burner,
sideways, and come back, laughing and scratching, so to speak, and up to the ready room after it's all said and done. And the SDO meets both of us.
SDO,
Squadron Duty Officer.
Okay, thank you.
Says, hey, the ops officer would like to see both of you in his office.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, and we both are like, what? And he kind of just mentions, he said, evidently you guys picked the wrong day to pylon turn the tower. I said, how's that? He said, there was a tour going on in the tower during your departure. And a phone
they didn't
call,
like the air show?
A phone call came into the OPSO, or, came into the squadron shortly thereafter. And so, okay, so Martini and I march over to the OPSO's office. Flash. His name's Flash. I mean, it's a scene out of the movie, the rubber dog shit scene.
Oh boy.
Martini marches in, we do our best office entry, and we march in, stand at attention on the other side of the desk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the questioning starts with me. Well, actually it's not questioning, but it's a statement to me. He says, Flash looks at me in the eye and he says, boy, Flash is a good old Southern guy. And he says, I can still hear his voice. Boy, you don't want to shit in your own backyard. And I remember when I heard that, saying to myself, man, I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good. You don't want to shit in your own backyard. And so he starts quizzing me on my departure, and you picked a bad day to, do this turn, he said. And so the course rules spelled out an altitude and a point where you could not start your turn until you were past the tower. When the altitude was like 300 feet.
Okay.
And so my response was, sir, I saw 300 feet and I saw the tower, was kind of what I said.
Oh, that's my bullshit story, and I'm stuck with it.
Yeah. I saw 300 feet and I was past the tower.
So Flash looks at Martini and says, Martini, what did you see? And Martini says, I don't recall. He says, well,
oh shit.
He says, what were you looking at? He said, well, I was looking at my radar scope. Why were you looking at your radar scope? He said, well, I was doing all my bit checks on the system, getting ready for the hop.
Fantastic.
And so it was in the end, it was the shortest period of being in trouble I ever went through in my entire life. The focus of the Inquisition now was all about Martini and what he was doing on departure.
Yeah. Instead of watching out,
instead of being a safety
doing his
observer.
bit checks.
And so every time I talk to Martini, I thank him for pulling me out of hot water.
Great.
Taking one for the team.
So, and for those that haven't heard the term before, a bit check is built-in test. So it's the computer's doing a self-test as you're doing it.
God bless them. God bless them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. This may be back into flight school then, because you also have in your notes here Skyhawk convertible. What's Skyhawk convertible?
Yes. Skyhawk convertible. I actually shared this story in my interview with the airline because it was kind of exciting, in dealing with pretty exciting emergency. So I somehow, I guess because I was an FCF guy, functional check flight guy in TA4s at the time. And it might have been.
So you'd gone back as an instructor?
Yeah, this is when you're in Kingsville.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is where we met. Because I met Taco when we were both instructors down in Kingsville.
Yes. And I think a part of my story might have been, it's a broken jet story and out of El Centro. So it was probably a jet that Fig broke actually and ended up in Davis-Monthan in Tucson, right? And they needed an FCF guy to go pick this airplane up and get it back to Kingsville at the time. So I volunteered. I can make that happen. So I pick up this TA4 that's now been serviced. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to get some enjoyment out of this experience. So I said, I planned this high-low, high kind of to get me back to Kingsville, which was going to include dropping in for a little low-level east side of El Paso, my hometown, out over the desert. So I take that A4 and drop in and do the low-level piece and pop up for the bingo into Kingsville and up at altitude in the high 30s. And it's about time to talking to Houston Center. Okay. And they give me this descent, time to start descending into Kingsville. And so I said, one last bit of fun all by myself here. I'm just going to push the nose over and see what I can get out of this airplane. It's supposed to be a supersonic airframe.
I've never had that experience in a TA4 before.
I hear it's bad.
I know. I can't wait to see how this goes.
But the other part of the story is I've got my mask off, taking a break. At the same time, I decide to push over. I just push over and start screaming out of the sky, and I'm hitting 0.90, maybe 0.91 or 92, and then explosion, kaboom. I hadn't heard anything like it in my entire life, and the cockpit was suddenly loud as could be. What the heck just happened? And I'm, in that time lapse where time freezes almost. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? I'm screaming out of the sky. It's terribly loud. I can't hear the radio. Did I hit someone? Did the motor explode? What the heck is this? So I come inside and I'm still here as best I can tell, and the gyro's upright. I'm flying straight and downhill, going awfully fast. And so I start jockeying the throttle because I can't hear a thing, watching the gauges. And I said, best I can tell, the motor's still running.
Okay.
Maybe I hit someone. I said, but the airplane seems to be flying okay. I'll do a visual inspection. So first place I reached up to was the rear view mirror on the left side on the canopy bow there. Okay. And I start looking at the airplane. I said, man, all the pieces that I can see are still there, the vertical stab. And so then I said, went to look at the mirror on the right side to take a look at the other side of the airplane, and immediately pull back because I'm staring at a shard of plexiglass pointed at me. And I look over, and the canopy on the Skyhawk is a big clamshell with 4 sections to it.
Yeah,
right.
That forward right section of the canopy is missing. It's completely gone. I'm in a convertible TA4 doing 0.92 downhill and going, how does this work? Because I remember looking down at my knee board, and the maps and everything were just sitting there. I'm like, where's this explosive decompression thing that's supposed to happen, and everything flies around?
Suck everything out, right? Yeah.
Anyway, I kept it coming downhill and declared an emergency. And little did I know, I mentioned the mask was off, and I don't even recall, but the first instinct, because I guess you did so much of it, got so well versed. The first thing I did, and I don't even remember doing it, was put my mask thankfully putting my mask back on because I
Muscle
was in
memory
the I was in the upper 30s when this all started.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And came downhill, talked to home base eventually. Made arrangements. It was a working day. There were other people airborne. I made arrangements for someone to look me over to make sure, because as I started trying to slow the airplane down, I get close to the 200 knot regime. It felt like the airplane was shaking and coming apart. And so I had one more visual inspection by someone out of the area, and they said, "Man, everything's there. It all looks good." And I said, "Well, why don't you give me a little room here? I'm going to try to slow down through 200 knots because I don't want to land this thing at 200 knots."
Yeah, right.
And I slowed down through the 200 knot regime, and then what I perceived as the airplane shaking kind of dissipated, and that's when I put two and two together to figure out. I think it just had to do with the airflow in the cockpit itself, in that hole, that giant hole, and the way the air was.
It was the burble.
Yeah. So
wow.
that was my exciting Skyhawk story.
Wow, I didn't remember that center bar over the canopy and that.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So there were 4 pieces. Yeah. Okay. Oh man, terrifying. So did you also mention during your airline interview that you had your mask off? And
no, I'm sure
I left that part out.
That details.
Forgot to mention that person.
I did.
Oh.
Yeah, just asking for a friend. Maybe you should go back and tell him. I don't know. So, and we got a Fig Beeve ACM stand check. We wanted to check.
Fig's kind of heard this one before. I'd forgotten. I think I told the story differently last time you had heard me, Fig.
All right.
I guess it's in the end, it's a story of what's the Navy stand for? Never again volunteer yourself. And a part of this story is that I had volunteered. Got asked, "Hey, do you want to be an instructor of instructors?" Sure, I can do that.
Sure. What could go wrong with that?
Not thinking it through completely, and somehow I end up paired up with Fig and his cohort Beeve, who need a stand check, ACM stand check, and I said, "Oh, that sounds like great. I'd be more than happy to work with."
Hey, for Taco, for our listeners, stand check, just to for listeners that maybe aren't familiar. Yeah. What is that?
A standardization check. So periodically, an instructor's got to check, make sure he hasn't gone off the reservation with regards to how he's instructing and the syllabus requirement. So you got to get checked out periodically. Make sure you're up to speed and you're.
Thank you.
Yes, there you have it.
All right.
So we're supposed to head out as a section to do some ACM, stand check, the gamut of things. And so little did I know what trouble laid ahead, or, I hadn't put the 2 and 2 together. A couple of Marines in different airplanes in close proximity.
Former squadron mates too. Beeve and I were in VMA 223 together. So there's.
So this is Dan Beeve.
Yeah.
Beeve.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Beeve,
right.
yeah.
Boy, talk about a guy who marches to his own drummer. Love you, Beeve.
Yeah.
So I knew right away that I was like, man, I made a mistake in signing up for this one. They briefed a section takeoff. Okay. This is the T-45 Goshawk by then now, right, Fig?
Okay.
We were in the Goshawk.
Yeah, probably so. Yes.
They briefed a section takeoff, and I'm riding back seat with Fig, and he's a wingman. The first indication that I was in for terror, so to speak, was, going through 110 knots or so, and I've been watching section takeoffs for several years now, and it's all kind of a smooth evolution typically. But the first thing that came to my attention that suggested this is not going to be a normal experience was the stick got my attention because it was ripped back into my own crotch during a section takeoff. And I'm like, what? And we hop off the ground ahead of lead and looking down at the top of Beeve's airplane. 10 feet off the deck in Kingsville. I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? It was so, that was just the intro to the rest of a flight that I hung on for dear life. You know, the pestering on the radio, these two Marines going at each other throughout the entire flight. I mean, they were ridiculing one another. And you had mentioned a rolling scissors earlier. Well, you know, that was a part of the stand check was, you know, all the various types of fights. Hey, let's do a flat scissors. Let's do a rolling scissors. Let's do a 1 circle fight, a 2 circle fight. When we said, hey, let's do a roller. This roller was like no roller I'd ever seen in my life. It was not a roller. It was a corkscrew. It was canopy to canopy, 2 Marines, and in the middle of it, they're cursing at one another.
That sounds about right.
Yes.
Yeah, you suck. Yeah.
Was there ever a time where you were uncomfortable? Were you concerned at any moment that safety?
From the moment you fastened your harness.
When the stick came back into my lap, that's when I got uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Man.
No, he's not. Yeah, that was just a Tuesday for Beav and I, you know.
It was.
Oh, holy shiza.
Goodness gracious. That was a little too much. Yeah.
Then you had then you went on for a close call with Butch.
Butchie boy. Yeah. That was my time in my first squadron.
Okay. Was that VF-11?
VF-11. Yeah. The Red Rippers.
Okay.
And so, hey, there we are. That
Tomcat.
Hey, there it is.
That's here's to the Rippers. Here's to the Rippers. People always ask, what are the 2 balls there next to the boar's head? Here's to the Rippers, a damn bunch of gin drinking, baloney slinging, 2-balled he-men bastards.
There you go.
I remember that one for some reason.
Wow, weird how that sticks out.
Yeah. Butch. So Butch was a well-respected department head who had come to us shortly after I got to the squadron. He had been a RAG instructor and just a all-around great pilot, great guy. And we end up with a good deal opportunity to go out in the working area off Oceana for some 1v1. And I was excited about the opportunity because, you know, Butch had such a reputation. And I knew I was
Rio?
Had my work cut out for me to try to keep from getting gunned. And that was...
he's a pilot. Okay.
Yeah, so 1v1 similar with Butch. And
okay.
So this first engagement, we go at it and quickly they're in the fight. I guess I elect to drive the fight 1 circle and into kind of a flat scissors. But I'm the first to, sky the airplane. So I've done my best to slow it down and try and flush them out in front of me. And so I'm stacked out of this move to go slow now and doing the tailpipe dance in a Tomcat, 110, 120 knots or so, thinking that, I may have flushed them to a small degree. And so I'm the cat up the tree, so to speak, in the fight, and with a great deal of separation early on. And I'm almost right overhead and kind of looking at him off my right 5 o'clock down low. And of course, most guys who've been in those kind of fight environments, to get the first guy to go high kind of always thinks he's, and I was leaning that way, that I've outskied him, hopefully he bled a little more energy and can't come up to me. So the fight moves into this slow motion at this point. And it's quickly, as the longer I watch, it's one of those constant bearing, decreasing range scenarios.
Oh boy.
And I'm basically doing the dance on the tail with, not a lot of authority to do much at this point. I'm just trying to stay high and not flush out in front. And as soon as I start picking up on the closure, I remember my next thought is, okay, reminder, Taco, this is Butch. You know, he's got a little more experience than you, and Butch is working some magic. Here it comes. Whether or not he was using the flaps, I couldn't tell. We were kind of restricted from doing that because quite often in the A models at the time, we would get a flap slat lockout, which meant your day of fighting was kind of over because you needed to get the airplane back. But anyhow, He's coming uphill, constant bearing, decrease in range. And my backseater is Chum, we called him. That's another story. And, you get to that point where you hit that 500-foot bubble where the fight is supposed to get knocked off, but
you're about 50 feet
but
apart.
At the same time, you can't believe what's happening is happening. I remember thinking to myself, what is he doing? Butch, what are you doing? Because it's basically lift vector on, and you are closing on me, and it gets to that point where I can't stand it anymore. My mind says we're going to collide, and so
if you do nothing different, you're going to collide.
I said I got to do something because either Butch is passed out, and that airplane's coming up and going to hit me, and so I unload the airplane, push forward on the stick with a guy coming up from below you, and stomp on the left rudder to roll this Tomcat to the right. And as I roll to the right and then now look left, I see a flash of Butch's airplane go by. And of course, the breeches that were wearing at the time, were soiled at that point.
No longer usable.
No longer usable. And then I finally called, knock it off. And the heart is racing, and we knock it off, and it's kind of silent on the radio. The other part of the story is we were in the VACAPES working area, and we were carrying pods, so we were in the tax range.
Oh, you were sending telemetry back.
We were sending telemetry, right?
Oh shit.
So, and Chumley, when that pass happened, I can still hear his voice going, whoa. And I knew it had been close. I knew it had been very close.
Yeah.
And so we parked those airplanes and walked over to the tax range trailer. And before we walked in, Butch grabbed me and he said, hey, nice move. And that was kind of that gentleman's, I think I pushed that a little too far, and I appreciate what you did. And
oh boy.
And so we watched it on the tax range, and that pass was in the teens. It was like a 19 or 20 foot pass.
Oh boy.
Wingtip to wingtip. And so, and the other, the end of that story is wasn't much more said after that. Butch kind of made it clear, hey, nice move. And then I got the opportunity years later, after I had been hired at the airline. I heard from Butch, who was retiring. He made a full career. I heard from Butch, hey, could you write me a letter? And I said, Butch, I would love to write you a letter. And he got hired as well. Junior.
Oh, nice. Of course.
There you go.
That's terrifying. I have also been in a similar experience than that. And I wonder, was he, I wonder if he was, kind of ballistic at the time and really had no control authority, and you were the one that got out of the way, solved the whole problem. I guess we'll never know.
He was the department head. I was the young lieutenant. I didn't feel compelled, or it was my place to query him about why did he do what he did?
What the fuck were you doing? Oh man. Well, at least you're both here to tell the story now. So that's outstanding.
Yes.
So, all right. So you also mentioned in your notes the night in the barrel. I can only assume that was in a Tomcat.
Yes. One more.
All carrier pilots have one at some point in time. So tell us about your night in the barrel.
One more Tomcat story. Yeah. So it was it was during workups and currency requirements. So we needed some night traps. And so turns out this particular night, flying with my backseater's call sign Slug, good guy. And you know how it works behind the boat at night is you all enter in the Marshall stack and get prepared depending on what kind of airplane you're in and particular altitude and that kind of stuff. So there was some weather that night, particularly a very thick layer of clouds. And so when we pushed out of altitude, in Marshall, I forgot to mention that. And this is for currency, but you start hearing the radio calls, and it's the first experience for me of hearing LSOs pitching deck calls.
Oh.
And so,
okay.
And
nice.
that kind of raises the anxiety level when you start hearing these decks down, hold what you got kind of, they're doing a lot of extra talking back there. So it's a little intimidating.
Okay. Hey, real quick, can you tell us what the Marshall stack is so people that aren't pilots?
Yeah, so the Marshall stack is part of the design for how we bring the approaches and bring the airplanes back to the carrier at night. And basically it's a stacked series of holding patterns for all the different airplanes. Every squadron you have a standardized altitude. So all these airplanes are stacked on top of one another in a holding pattern. And then there's a push time that starts the whole thing. And you push 1 minute intervals depending on where you're stacked, basically in that particular order. And it's typically, 20 miles behind the carrier. So something along those lines, all designed to get you on final approach for landing at night. So basically a stacked holding pattern for the whole, for all those airborne.
Perfect. All right. So you're in the stack.
So you're in the stack. We're hearing the calls. So the deck's moving at night this is my first experience with hearing that. So little intimidation factor. Then the next intimidation factor is there's indeed IMC involved here to the degree it probably poked in about 15,000 was when IMC and so at this night as soon as I penetrated through into this cloud, solid deck, the other thing that hit me was I immediately got hit with a bad case of the leans, convinced the airplane was in a 90-degree angle of bank.
Oh, yeah. Good times.
And so
your instrument said you were level. So, what do you believe?
So I let Slug know right away. I said, hey, Slug, man, I got the leans, something bad. And so, the training for him is, be a verbalized attitude gyro for him, hey, your wings level. And so he was doing his best.
This up.
Yeah. And as I said, it was a very thick layer. And so while I'm in this condition the whole time, I couldn't shake it. I was staring at the gyro and doing my best, but it was very uncomfortable. So eventually, though, I think broke out maybe down around 2,000 feet or so, 1,500 feet. And for those who've been through the experience, typically as soon as you get underneath and you get another horizon back you kind of break out of it, which happened for me, but that's about the same time. It's time to the real rubber meets the road here. It's time to you're approaching that call the ball spot and time to fly the approach to the carrier. So, but Slug, so the backseaters and the Tomcat, they do all the radio call for you. So the first funny part to the story is Slug checks in, with nose number, squadron identification, and a fuel state is typically what you make the ball call with, Yep. Ripper 101 Tomcat ball with 8.0, whatever the case. Well, the other party adds to it this night, Tomcat ball 8.0, pilot has vertigo is what he transmitted to the LSO.
Thanks, dude.
So there's this
Slug.
And this is in the middle of these guys are, hey, the deck's down. And it's kind of silent for a couple of potatoes. I'm like, your wings level. And then that was it. And, but I can't remember so I get into the middle of the approach, and I think I got waved off for a foul deck at that point. They waved off. So
okay,
back up into the weather.
Not your fault, but time to go around.
So this is the first attempt. So circle back around, try another one, and this time it's wave off out of sync with the deck. So in other words, The deck was coming up as I was approaching the in close position, very close to the carrier. It's a scenario they don't want to try to, that's bad juju. Deck's coming up while you're coming across the ramp. I got waved off.
Taxi one wire. In other words, land and roll into the number one wire.
Yeah, at best, maybe.
or a ramp strike.
Yes. So wave off number 2 now.
Okay.
And then the next one is it's deck's going down. And what happens when the deck's going down? You bolter. And so I boltered on the third. And so after the third attempt, and basically now I'm the last guy left because everyone else is. And so
you're getting aboard.
And it's amazing. It's amazing what starts going through your head under these conditions. You're like, I'm the last guy out here. First thing I'm thinking about is all my buds are in the ready room watching this on the Platt TV, eating popcorn and drinking soda. How many times is Taco going to go around the pattern tonight? Right.
Yeah. Right.
And, the pucker factor is at an extreme. And so, but the signal after my third attempt is, your signal is tank. You need to go. We want you to get some gas.
They put you on the tanker.
Where's the tanker? Where's the tanker? He's back up at 15,000 feet.
Yeah, back in the weather.
So
you got to go through the weather.
Up
again.
into the weather I go. Find this S3 tanker, right? And so what's the other? When it rains, it pours.
Sure.
And find the tanker, join on them. It would be nice to have some lights on the basket on this particular night, but there's no lights on the basket.
Well, that would make it easy.
That would make it way too easy. No lights on the basket. I am basically flying formation off the glow of this S3's turbofan motor, saying, what did I do wrong to deserve this? And somehow find the basket, plug in. And the whole time I'm plugged in, they're on the radio. You guys done yet? The pressure's on. They want you back. You guys done yet? You done yet? And then eventually, we're done. We're done. We'll turn left and descend. And so what does dumb Taco do? Sure, turn left and descend immediately. And what happens as soon as I put my nose back in the weather again?
You're back in the vertigo, baby.
I got the leans, man. I got the leans bad. So the same,
oh no!
But of course, when I get underneath and the same call comes out of slug, and I don't know how I figured out how to make it work, but we got on board that next pass, and so
thank goodness.
So eventually, make it into the ready room, and this is where Donger comes into the story. Donger was one of my favorites. He was the guy who kind of took me under his wing as a senior Rio, a lieutenant commander, another department head when I was brand new in the squadron. But he was a very talented guy for many reasons. One, he had a great sense of humor, and two, he could draw. He could draw caricature, artwork kind of stuff. And so when we popped into the ready room, Donger had taken over the whiteboard and drawn this caricature of myself and Slug, two big noggins sticking out of this tomcat, and the little windows of thought processes going on. Slug's calling the ball, pilot has vertigo, and then my little thought bubble was vertigo. I'll show you vertigo.
Too bad. I bet you don't have a picture of that either, do you?
No, that was before cell phones.
I do have a picture of that artwork, and I
no way.
have to track it down. I do have a picture of it.
Well, if you can find that and send it to us, I'll put it on the blog post for the episode. That'd be awesome.
That's great.
So, yeah, that would be very cool.
I'll show you vertigo.
Yeah, right. Hold my beer. Oh, too funny. Hey, one quick one before we move on to the last story is: can you describe that night pattern below the clouds? What happens when you get waved off? How does that work?
Yeah,
if you get waved off at night, what's the pattern? Like, what?
Yeah,
it's not visual.
It's not the standard 600 foot.
No, it isn't.
Pattern. Yeah.
Gosh, it's been so long.
It doesn't have to be exact. Just get us close.
I'm gonna say 1,500 feet.
Okay,
something along those lines.
Okay,
2,000.
But then they take you back. They take you back out a few miles in trail of the ship, right?
Yes.
2-3 miles in trail. Pick up the glide slope and come back.
Yes.
Just a case free.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we're getting near the end here. Got one other thing in the notes I'd love to hear about is your airline. You move on to your airline career after failing to tell them about ripping off your oxygen mask and violating NATOPS.
Well, hold on a second. He wasn't ripping it off. And what I heard him say, he was trying to wipe the sweat from his face.
Yeah,
when
that's
he
what
had it off.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it's normal.
Yes.
There you go.
We all did that.
Yeah. So you're on your airline now, and you're on to your airline layover bag drop buffoonery. Chat with us about that, if you would.
I figured you needed a story from all, yes,
Yeah.
from all
Facets
generations.
of your aviation.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one kind of made me laugh. So yeah, very early on as an airline guy, and I'm flying with this captain. He's a little crazy. He's a fun guy and a married guy. And we are headed into New York for a layover in New York. And that whole day had been talking about, he was planning, his wife was flying up this guy was a commuter out of Florida, and his wife was going to be flying up to meet us in New York, all because they were at the stage of the game in their relationship as a married couple that they were ready to have children, but they were having some difficulties, and so they were using these various methods, the rhythm method, I think, at the time. And this particular night, she was a good night to try to make all happen. That's why she was flying all the way to New York, and so he was telling me all about that.
Okay.
Right.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
He said she's not going to be in till a couple hours after we get in. He said, "You want to grab some dinner?" And I said, "Yeah, great." And so we went out and had some dinner, and I said, "Hey, have fun. Yeah, see you tomorrow morning." We got the old dark 30 pickup, the next day.
Oh boy.
I think we were staying at the Helmsley. If you,
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
way back when we were staying at the Helmsley, it was kind of cool. So we're flying into LaGuardia. That's it to finish before the layover. LaGuardia there, and we're getting off the airplane. We're kind of one of the last to get off. I can't remember what was holding us up, but anyway, just works out that one of the last people as well getting off is a good-looking gal was coming off the airplane at about the same time we were packing up our bags and walking off the airplane. And she's an airline employee herself, and she's a very attractive woman. And the captain sparks up a conversation, and lo and behold, she's visiting New York and going to meet her mother there. He gets this story, and long story short, the captain says she happens to be staying somewhere near the Helmsley. He said, "You got a ride?" And she said, "Well, I hadn't looked into it yet. I was thinking about a taxi." He said, "You ought to just ride with us. Your hotel's very close. You're welcome to ride with us." He invites this gal, so you got the two lapdog, guys oohing and ahhing over some cute gal. And as we're walking down the jet bridge, like, oh, we got some entertainment for the ride into the Helmsley.
Into the city. Yeah.
And as we're leaving, the captain looks at me and says, "Hey, let's throw our bags in the bag cage here at LaGuardia at the time." I'm like, this was back in the day and age when we were carrying that 30-pound weight.
Yeah, sure.
So we both throw our bags. I said, one less thing to worry about. We throw our bags into the cage there at LaGuardia, and off we go, fat, dumb, and happy with a gal we get to have some conversation with, going to the Helmsley and
Real quick, so that bag that he's talking about is our nav kit. It said huge binders with all the approach plates and charts and all that kind of stuff.
Big leather, boxy, 40-pound bag that we all carried back then. We don't.
But
carry
you didn't need
anymore.
it at your hotel. So.
Didn't need it at the hotel. Yes. Threw it in the cage. Off we went. All jumped in the van. Had a great time. Go out to dinner. And then I go up and get to bed early that night because we got the dark 30 the next morning. So I pop up, and I'm the first guy down the elevator because I get out into the lobby and there's coffee available. I remember pouring a cup of coffee and standing there and with a smile on my face thinking, that was a great idea to leave the nav bags back there in the cage because it's so nice not having one. I remember thinking that as I was sipping on my coffee. And shortly thereafter, as I'm standing there, fat, dumb, and happy, the captain comes around the corner. He's a black guy, and And he looks one shade paler than I remember seeing him last. He looks at me. He says, man, I think we got a problem. I said, what's that? He said, I think I left my nav bag on that van last night. I don't have my nav bag. And I started laughing at him. I said, you didn't leave your nav bag on the van? He's like, I didn't. Where's my nav bag? I said, we left him in the cage back there at LaGuardia. And then he got real white. And he said,
we're not flying out of LaGuardia.
We've got a big problem. I said, what's that? He said, we're flying out of Newark this morning, and neither one of us have our nav bags. And we're scheduled to fly. We're scheduled to fly the Transcon, the LA Transcon, first thing in the morning out of Newark.
In about 90 minutes hence.
Yes.
No.
And people were asking for his business card, his name. Those New York businessmen were not happy when we told them we were waiting on our nav bags.
Oh my gosh! So they had to put him in a cab.
Put him in a cab.
Drive him over.
We put him in a cab, sent him over. We left late, of course, and the captain says, "Don't worry about it." The other complete buffoonery everywhere. So it continued into. He says, "Don't worry about it. We'll make it up. It's a long flight. We can make it up." So he plans, we're going to stay down low and we're going to rage across the country. And we
into the headwinds, right?
Yeah.
We come raging into the LA area, start descending. And they said, "Hey, we got holding instructions for you," after we burned all our gas ripping across the country. And they put us in holding over Ontario and we started chatting about it, and we said, "What's the hold for? We're swapping the airport around. They're not landing west; they're landing east,
which they never do.
Never do,
Yeah,
right?
And so we do like I said, "Hey, Captain, my calculation says we can do one turn. That's it. we're done."
And then we are out of gas.
And so
we got to go.
I started plugging in Ontario. I started working, and the captain's on the radio the whole time. "Hey, can you take us? Can you take us?" We actually started descending into Ontario, and if they said, "Hey, we can take you now," and the captain says, "Give us a vector." And I remember going, "I'm not sure this is going to work out."
Oh, God.
No, it wasn't quite that bad. It was the lowest fuel value I had seen up to that point, so it built a little bit more comfort factor. I've been through the experience of landing on the lower side of the fuel, but we made it right, and then that was the end of the story. But
geez,
so
what? How one little key event trickled down into this nightmare scenario at the end. Holy shit!
Yes,
right.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you. That is amazing. Fig, I think it's time we land the airplane.
All right.
Why don't you give it a start, brother? Thank you for your service, Taco, and thanks for joining us and giving us your time today.
Third generation naval aviator, and now you've got a fourth generation naval aviator in your family, and that's pretty damn awesome.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your service. And also, we need to also mention probably the most important factor, and that is our families of all the loved ones who are serving. Really, that allows those who are serving to do it with no distractions, I guess, is a good way to say it.
Absolutely. They sacrifice as much as the person who signed the dotted line, so to speak, in so many cases. So we're appreciative of that. Hey, thanks also to Dave Hamilton, who gave us the knowledge and know-how and technical ability to get this show up online. And he runs a company called Backbeat Media, backbeatmedia.com. And he gives us the advertising, and Cashfly gives us the bandwidth to get us up.
We also need to thank all of our Patreon subscribers
responsible
who have lost all financial judgment and donate money to us, but it makes a big difference in allowing us to put this podcast out. So thank you.
It does indeed. Yeah. Thank you so much. And if you want to donate, go to sothereiwas.us/donate and give us give us all your money. That's not what I wanted to say, but it came out wrong. I need to thank specifically Ames Ziegra, who put $20 in our pocket this week. We're grateful for that. And Double L continues his membership as a section lead. But if you go to therewas.us/donate, you'll see Patreon, direct donations, and now Venmo. We have the Venmo ability to give us a donation there. So we're
Double L's lost his mind. He's lost his financial mind.
Yeah.
Thanks, Double L.
Indeed. So
hey, we got a merch shop.
We do indeed.
Repeat's wearing a little merch right now. You know, if it's not on our merch page, it's probably not made. Oh, look at that! Looks like got
my hoodie on.
Looks like a Unabomber guy.
That's right.
Hey, we have a bikini out there too on our Taco. You might want to look into that, bro. You could rock that. So there I was, bikini.
That reminds me,
coming right up.
Is there truth to the challenge that went down for the guy who lost was going to have to wash his car in a Speedo there in Kingsville while we were there? Did you have a challenge with some other Marine while we were there?
I am not going to confirm or deny any of that. There may or may not have been some of that happening. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, too funny. Yeah, that was it. So there I was at US/merch. You can get your own bikini there, koozies, mugs, T-shirts, hoodies, all kinds of cool stuff there. So thanks also to Badass Brad Silcott at bdsaviationphotography.com, who lets us use many of his artistic photos. We're deeply appreciative of that. Fig, how can someone help us out if they can't give money?
They give us 5-star rating. 5-star rating.
Yeah.
Not 3, not 4, 5. And listen, if you can't give us 5, tell us why, because we're trainable. And if you can't give us 5, give that rating to somebody else's podcast.
Right? Exactly right. So I'm trying to think if there's any other thanks. DCRworks.net, who sponsored this show. But
yeah, Derek is a true artist, and we're grateful to have him right now. And I'm looking at my Naval Aviator 3D metal wings that's across the bar from me, and I think yours is in the background right there.
Yep, they're fantastic.
And what you're hearing is the Dos Gringos. Those are the 2 F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good. If you're having a bad day, you got to listen to one of their songs, because they got 4 albums and there's not a bad one, and it'll brighten your day.
It will indeed. So, I just don't know what else to say except until next week, stay safe and check 6.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way.
No way.
'Cause when you're going down in the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
It's what?
He said it's over.
You got to nip it in the bud.
Is it over?
Apparently it's over.
Is it over?
Son of a bad word.